Hi, I am Sophia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
Let me back up and explain how I ended up standing in the entrance of Riverside Country Club while my parents demanded my removal from a property I'd secretly owned for 3 years. My name is Sarah Mitchell and I grew up as the family disappointment. Not because I failed at anything, but because I succeeded in ways my parents couldn't understand or control. My father, Robert Mitchell, spent 40 years climbing the corporate ladder at a mid-sized insurance company. He made decent money, around $180,000 annually, and considered himself financially sophisticated. My mother, Patricia, never worked but managed their household with military precision. Together they built a comfortable upper-middle-class life centered around appearances, status symbols, and acceptance by people they considered important. My older brother, James, followed Dad's script perfectly. Business degree from a respectable state school. Corporate job. Suburban house. Country club membership application pending. He was everything they wanted me to be. I was everything they feared. At 18, instead of attending the university they'd selected, I took a full scholarship to a state school they considered beneath us, and studied computer science. Dad called it a phase. Mom told relatives I was finding herself before coming to her senses. I didn't argue. I just worked. During college I built websites for local businesses. Small stuff. Restaurants, dental offices, real estate agents. I charged $500 to $2,000 per project and lived in a tiny apartment saving every dollar. My parents assumed I was struggling. They'd occasionally send care packages with notes about when you're ready to transfer to a real school. I never corrected them. After graduation, while my classmates competed for $65,000 entry-level positions, I started my own digital marketing agency. I called it Cascade Solutions, a deliberately generic name that wouldn't attract attention. I hired 3 other developers, rented a small office space and started landing corporate clients. My parents thought I was working some tech support job. I let them believe it. By age 25, Cascade Solutions generated $2.3 million in annual revenue. By 28, we'd expanded to 47 employees and $12 million annually. I took a modest salary, $85K, and reinvested everything else. My lifestyle stayed simple. Used Honda, 1-bedroom apartment, minimal spending. My parents watched my brother buy a 4-bedroom house and a Mercedes. They asked why I couldn't get a real job like James. I smiled and said, I'm working on it. What they didn't know, I was building a real estate portfolio. Commercial properties mostly. I started with a small office building, then a retail plaza, then a mixed-use development. Each property cash flowed beautifully and I reinvested the profits into larger acquisitions. At 32 I made my biggest purchase. Riverside Country Club. The club had been family-owned for 60 years but was drowning in debt after a failed expansion. The owners needed $8.5 million immediately to avoid foreclosure. I structured a deal through a holding company, Mitchell Property Holdings LLC, and closed in 45 days. My parents had no idea. They were too busy trying to get into Riverside Country Club as members. Owning Riverside wasn't about ego. It was a sound investment. The club sat on 47 acres of prime real estate, generated $3.2 million in annual membership fees, and had hosted charity galas, corporate events, and weddings for decades. The previous owners had mismanaged finances, but the fundamentals were strong. I kept the existing management team, modernized operations, and implemented systems from my tech business. Within 18 months, the club was profitable again. Within 2 years, the property value had increased to $14.7 million. My parents knew none of this. They saw their daughter who worked in tech and refused to settle down properly. Meanwhile, they spent every family gathering talking about James's pending membership application to Riverside. The membership committee meets in 3 months, Dad announced at Christmas dinner. James and Rebecca's application is being sponsored by the Hendersons. Very prestigious family. Mom beamed. Once James is accepted, it'll open so many doors. The right connections are everything. I nodded politely and ate my turkey. You should try networking more, Dad told me. Maybe James could introduce you to some successful people at the club. Help you elevate yourself. I replied, that's thoughtful. Thank you. What I didn't say, I just approved a $2.3 million renovation to the club's event facilities. James's membership application was sitting on my desk. Technically on the membership director's desk, but she reported to me. The Hendersons he mentioned, they were 2 months behind on their membership dues. I kept my ownership quiet for strategic reasons. Running a successful business meant avoiding unnecessary complications. Family drama definitely qualified as unnecessary complications. But I couldn't stay hidden forever. The trouble started when Mom called in early April. "Sarah, we need to talk about the family reunion." My stomach dropped. Mitchell family reunions happened every 5 years at increasingly expensive venues. My parents used them to showcase their success to extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, distant relatives they barely spoke to otherwise. "We're hosting it at Riverside Country Club this year," Mom continued, her voice dripping with pride. James's membership was just approved and he graciously offered to sponsor the event. "Isn't that wonderful?" I kept my voice neutral. "That's great, Mom. It's in 6 weeks. June 15th. We've invited everyone, all 47 family members. It'll be the most elegant reunion we've ever had." "Sounds lovely. There's just one small thing." Her tone shifted. "The club has very strict standards. Dress code, behavior expectations, that sort of thing. I need you to understand that this is an important event for our family's reputation." Translation: "Don't embarrass us." "I'll be appropriately dressed," I said. "It's not just that, Sarah." She sighed. "Your father and I have been discussing it and we think, perhaps it would be better if you didn't attend." The words hung in the air. "You're uninviting me from the family reunion?" "Not uninviting," she said quickly. "Just suggesting that given your current circumstances, you might feel more comfortable sitting this one out. The club attracts a certain caliber of people and we don't want you to feel out of place." My current circumstances. Code 4. You're not successful enough to be seen with us at the fancy country club. "I'll think about it," I said. "We'd really appreciate it, sweetheart. James worked so hard to get his membership. We don't want anything to complicate things." I hung up and sat in my corner office, the one overlooking Riverside's 18th hole, and made a decision. I wasn't avoiding the reunion. I was attending. But I wasn't correcting their assumptions either. Not yet. I wanted to see exactly how far they'd take this. Over the next 6 weeks, I watched from behind the scenes as my family planned their elaborate reunion. James booked the grand ballroom, the club's most prestigious event space, for $8,500. He ordered the premium catering package for $147 per person. He arranged for valet parking, specialty cocktails, and a live jazz quartet. Mom emailed the entire extended family with updates. This year's reunion will be held at the exclusive Riverside Country Club, courtesy of James's membership. Dress code, cocktail attire. Please RSVP by June 1st. She didn't mention me in any correspondence. Dad called twice to check in. Both times he casually mentioned how busy I must be and how no one would be offended if I couldn't make it. I told him I was planning to attend. "Sarah, be reasonable," he said during the second call. "This event costs money. Real money. We're trying to make a good impression. Your brother's business associates will be there. Important people." "I understand completely," I replied. "Do you? Because showing up in your situation, it reflects on all of us. My situation. My used Honda. My 1-bedroom apartment. My tech support job. I'll be there, Dad." He sighed heavily. "If you insist on coming, please be on your best behavior. Don't talk about work. You'll only confuse people. Don't draw attention to yourself. And for God's sake, dress appropriately." "I'll do my best." What he didn't know, I'd already instructed the club manager, David Chin, on exactly how to handle the situation. David had been with Riverside for 12 years and stayed on after my acquisition. He was professional, discreet, and understood exactly what was about to happen. "Are you sure about this approach, Ms. Mitchell?" he'd asked during our planning meeting. "Completely sure," I'd replied. "Let it play out naturally. When they demand to see the owner, you'll know what to say." He smiled. "It'll be my pleasure, ma'am." June 15th arrived sunny and perfect. I dressed carefully. A sophisticated navy dress, modest jewelry, professional heels. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. Just elegant enough to belong. I drove my Honda to Riverside and parked in the member lot. The valet looked surprised but took my keys without comment. The grand ballroom looked spectacular. James had good taste, I'd give him that. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, centerpieces of fresh flowers. The jazz quartet played softly in the corner. About 30 family members had already arrived, mingling with cocktails. I walked in quietly and headed toward the bar. I made it approximately 15 feet before Mom intercepted me. Sarah. Her voice was sharp. What are you doing here? Attending the family reunion. Hello, Mom. Her face flushed. We discussed this. This isn't appropriate. I'm family, I said calmly. It's a family reunion. Dad appeared beside her, his expression thunderous. Sarah, we specifically asked you not to come. You suggested I might be more comfortable elsewhere. I disagreed. Nearby conversations stopped. Cousins turned to watch. Aunt Jennifer whispered something to Uncle Mark. This is embarrassing, Mom hissed. Look at yourself. You don't even belong in a place like this. I'm dressed appropriately, I replied. Cocktail attire as requested. That's not the point. Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice. This club has standards. Members only and they're invited guests. You're neither. I was invited. It's a family event. By us, Mom snapped. And we're uninviting you. Please leave before you make a scene. James rushed over, his face red. What's going on? Your sister refuses to leave, Dad said. James looked at me with barely concealed contempt. Sir, come on. Don't do this. I worked hard for my membership. You being here, it's not a good look. Not a good look for whom? For any of us. He gestured around the room. These are important people. My business associates. The Hendersons. The Carmichaels. You think they want to see somewhat, James? He caught himself. Someone who doesn't understand what this place represents. The jazz quartet had stopped playing. Every single family member was watching now. 47 people holding cocktails, waiting to see what happened next. Dad made a decision. He strode toward the ballroom entrance where David Chin stood overseeing the event. I followed. Get used to the owner right now, Dad yelled, his voice echoing through the ballroom. Every conversation stopped. The silence was absolute. David maintained his professional composure. Sir, I'm the club manager. How can I help you? There's been a mistake, Dad said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. This woman, he pointed at me, doesn't belong here. She's not a member. She's not a proper guest. She needs to be removed immediately. Mom arrived beside him, her face tight. Remove her immediately. We have important guests here. This is unacceptable. David looked at me. I gave him the slightest nod. I understand your concern, sir, David said smoothly. Let me clarify the situation. There's nothing to clarify, Dad interrupted. My son is a member. This is his event. He decides who's invited. She's not invited. Actually, sir, there's a complication. What complication? I want to speak to the owner. Right now. Get me the owner of this club. David's expression never changed. He turned to face me directly. Ma'am, how would you like to handle your family's membership application? Time stopped. Dad's face went from red to white in approximately 2 seconds. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Mom grabbed the nearest table for support. What did you just say? David continued as if nothing unusual had happened. Ms. Mitchell has owned Riverside Country Club for 3 years. She acquired the property in 2021 through Mitchell Property Holdings. Since that time, she's overseen all operations, including membership applications and event bookings. That's impossible, James whispered. I finally spoke. My voice was calm, quiet, and reached every corner of that silent ballroom. It's not impossible. It's real estate investment. I bought the club when it was facing foreclosure. David and his team have done excellent work turning operations around. You own this? Dad stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Yes. The whole thing. The entire property. 47 acres, the clubhouse, the golf course, all facilities. I also own the office building where your insurance company leases space, Dad. And the retail plaza where Mom gets her hair done. And the mixed-use development downtown where James's company has its offices. The silence was so profound I could hear someone's phone vibrate 3 tables away. Mom found her voice first. How? I built a successful digital marketing agency, Cascade Solutions. We generate approximately $12 million annually. I use the profits to invest in commercial real estate. Currently, my portfolio is valued at approximately $47 million. Riverside was my largest single acquisition at $8.5 million, and it's now worth approximately $14.7 million. James made a sound like he'd been punched. But you drive a Honda, Mom said weakly. A 2019 Honda Accord. Excellent reliability. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I own the building. I live in 1 unit and rent the other 17. The property generates $43,000 monthly. Dad's legs seemed to give out. He sat down heavily in the nearest chair. You've been lying to us. No, I said. I've been private. There's a difference. You assumed I was struggling because I didn't spend money on status symbols. I let you assume that because it was easier than explaining wealth management strategies to people who measure success by car brands. But the membership application, James said. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. The committee approved me. The Hendersons sponsored me. I paid the $15,000 initiation fee. The committee reports to David. David reports to me. Your application was approved because it met our standards, not because of your sponsors. The Hendersons, incidentally, are being reviewed for membership suspension due to non-payment of dues. David nodded confirmation. Aunt Jennifer found her voice from across the room. So this whole time, Sarah's been rich. I wouldn't say rich, I replied. Comfortable. Financially secure. Building wealth. While we all thought you were some kind of failure, Uncle Mark added. You thought I was a failure because I didn't perform success the way you expected. I was too busy actually building it. Mom's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to talk about my business, Dad changed the subject or told me to get a real job. Every achievement I mentioned you dismissed as nice hobby. Every milestone you compared unfavorably to James's corporate ladder climbing. Eventually I stopped trying to explain. I looked around the ballroom at 47 family members staring at me with various expressions of shock, confusion, and dawning realization. I didn't come here today to embarrass anyone, I continued. I came because I'm family and this is a family reunion. You uninvited me because you were ashamed of what you thought I was. But you never actually knew what I was. You never asked. Dad stood up slowly. His face had gone from pale to gray. I need air. He walked toward the terrace doors. Mom followed, moving like she was underwater. James just stood there, his phone still in his hand, staring at nothing. David leaned toward me. Shall I have the event continue as planned? Yes, please. The family paid for this event. They should enjoy it. Very good, ma'am. He signaled to the jazz quartet. Music resumed. Slowly, conversations restarted. But the energy had shifted completely. People weren't talking about business connections or country club prestige anymore. They were talking about me. Cousin Lisa approached cautiously. Sarah? Is it true you own this whole place? Yes. And you've been working in tech this whole time? Building a digital marketing agency and investing in real estate. She shook her head slowly. I've spent 10 years trying to impress Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia. I thought that's what success looked like. But you just did your own thing. Pretty much. That's incredible. She hugged me suddenly. Good for you. Other cousins followed. Some with congratulations. Some with apologies for believing their parents' dismissive comments about me. Some just wanting to understand how I'd done it. James finally moved. He walked past me without making eye contact and headed to the bar. He ordered a double whiskey and drank it in one swallow. Rebecca, his wife, approached me instead. I didn't know, she said quietly. James never. He always talked about you like you were. A disappointment? Yeah. She looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. I laughed along with the jokes. At family dinners. About your little tech job, and your used car. I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you. She glanced at James, then back at me. What happens now? What do you mean? To his membership. To everything. Nothing happens to his membership. He met the requirements. He paid his fees. The membership stands. Really? I bought this club as an investment, not as a tool for family revenge. James earned his membership through the proper channels. It has nothing to do with me. She looked relieved and surprised. Thank you. Though he does owe the club $8,500 for tonight's event. That bill still needs to be paid. Right. Of course. She hurried toward James. I found David again. How's the kitchen handling the service? Perfectly on schedule. Dinner will be served in 20 minutes. Excellent. He hesitated. Your parents went to the parking lot. Should I? Leave them. They need time to process. Understood. I walked through the ballroom making small talk with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Most were genuinely happy for my success. Some were clearly recalculating their opinions of me. A few, mostly my parents' closest friends, looked uncomfortable, like they'd been caught gossiping about someone who turned out to be more important than they realized. Dinner was served at 7. The food was excellent. Pepper-crusted filet, roasted vegetables, truffle mashed potatoes. My parents returned just as plates were being delivered. They sat at their assigned table without speaking to anyone. I ate at a table with Lisa and her husband, Uncle Mark, and Aunt Jennifer. We talked about real estate investment, digital marketing strategies, and the challenges of running a business. Real conversations. Substantive topics. Across the room, I watched Dad push food around his plate. Mom hadn't touched hers. James drank steadily throughout dinner. The reunion ended around 10. Families filtered out, many stopping to say goodbye to me with newfound respect in their voices. The valley brought cars around. The jazz quartet packed up their instruments. David approached as I was preparing to leave. Ms. Mitchell, your parents asked to speak with you. They're waiting in the garden room. Thank you, David. The garden room was a smaller, private space overlooking the golf course. My parents sat on opposite ends of a leather sofa, not looking at each other. I entered and closed the door. You wanted to talk? Dad spoke first. His voice sounded 20 years older than it had that morning. Why did you do this? Do what? Build a successful business? Invest wisely? Buy a country club? Humiliate us in front of the entire family? I sat down across from them. I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourselves by demanding my removal from a property I own. I simply corrected your misunderstanding. You let us believe you were struggling, Mom said. I lived modestly and reinvested my profits. That's not struggling. That's strategy. You interpreted my choices as failure because they didn't match your definition of success. We're your parents, Dad said. You should have told us. I tried. For years. Remember when I told you I'd landed a $200,000 contract? You said it was nice, and changed the subject to James's promotion. Remember when I mentioned buying my first property? You asked when I'd get a stable job with benefits. Every achievement I shared you dismissed. Eventually I stopped sharing. Mom's eyes were red. We didn't mean. Didn't mean what? To make it clear that nothing I did would ever be good enough? That unless I followed James's exact path, I was somehow failing. That's not fair, Dad protested. Isn't it? Tonight, you demanded I be removed from a family event because you were ashamed to be seen with me. Not because I'd done anything wrong. Because you assumed I wasn't successful enough to be there. And when you discovered the truth, your first reaction was to accuse me of humiliating you. Not to apologize. Not to acknowledge you were wrong. But to make yourselves the victims. The silence stretched. Finally Mom spoke. Her voice was small. What do you want from us? Nothing. Nothing. I stopped needing your validation years ago. I built my success without your support. I'll continue without it. So that's it. Dad's voice rose. You're just going to cut us out? I'm not cutting anyone out. You're welcome to maintain a relationship with me. But it'll be on honest terms. No more condescension. No more dismissive comments about my choices. No more measuring my worth by your standards. And if we can't do that? I stood up. Then we'll see each other at reunions every 5 years and exchange polite small talk. Your choice. I walked to the door. Sarah. Mom's voice stopped me. I'm sorry. I turned. She was crying. I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to hide your success from us. I'm sorry we weren't the parents who celebrated your achievements instead of comparing them to your brothers. I'm sorry for tonight. Dad said nothing. His jaw was tight. I nodded. Thank you for saying that, Mom. Can we try again? Better this time. Maybe. But it'll take time. How much time? However long it takes for you to see me for who I actually am instead of who you wanted me to be. I left them in the garden room and walked out to the parking lot. The valet brought my Honda around. As I drove away from Riverside Country Club, my country club, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. That was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. Coffee next week. I smiled and replied, absolutely. Another text came through. James, we need to talk. I didn't respond. The story spread through the extended family like wildfire. Within a week, every Mitchell relative knew that the family disappointment secretly owned a multi-million-dollar business and real estate portfolio. The reactions varied wildly. My parents requested family therapy. We went to 4 sessions before Dad dropped out, claiming it was unnecessary. Mom continued for another 2 months. Our relationship improved marginally. She stopped making dismissive comments about my career, but the underlying resentment lingered. Dad and I exchanged emails about twice a month. Surface-level stuff. The weather. Holiday plans. James's reaction was more complicated. He sent a series of increasingly emotional texts over 3 weeks. First angry, accusing me of playing games and making him look stupid. Then confused, asking why I'd never told him. Finally, grudging respect mixed with obvious jealousy. We met for coffee in August. He looked tired. Rebecca thinks I should apologize, he said. Do you think you should apologize? I don't know. He stirred his coffee without drinking it. I spent my whole life being the golden child. The one who did everything right. And it turns out you were more successful the entire time, just quieter about it. Success isn't a competition, James. Isn't it though? That's how we were raised. Mom and Dad constantly compared us. Your grades versus mine. Your job versus mine. Your life choices versus mine. And we both lost that game. You lost yourself trying to meet their expectations. I lost a relationship with my family trying to escape them. He finally looked at me. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Yeah. I am. Even with all this. The family drama. The weirdness. I built something I'm proud of. I have financial security. I make my own choices. Yeah, I'm happy. He nodded slowly. I'm not sure I can say the same thing. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a reconciliation exactly, but it was honest. That was more than we'd had before. Riverside Country Club continued operating successfully. David and his team kept membership steady, hosted dozens of events and maintained the property beautifully. The club generated consistent cash flow and appreciated in value. I sold Cascade Solutions in September for $18.7 million to a larger marketing firm that wanted our client base and team. I stayed on as a consultant for 6 months to help with the transition, then stepped back completely. My portfolio now includes 14 commercial properties, 3 residential buildings and Riverside. Total value, approximately $63 million. I still drive the Honda. I still live in the 1-bedroom apartment. I still dress modestly and avoid flashy displays of wealth. Not because I'm hiding anymore. Because that's genuinely who I am. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. The topic, building wealth without seeking approval. I accepted. The final text exchange with my father happened in late September. Dad, your mother showed me the conference announcement. Congratulations. Me, thank you. Dad, I suppose we should have paid better attention. Me, yes. You should have. Dad, I'm sorry for that. It wasn't much. But it was something. I don't know if my relationship with my parents will ever fully heal. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But I'm no longer waiting for their approval to live my life. I already have everything I need. I built it myself.